Welcome to CBTS Tech Talk inside the CISO's office. I'm the producer, Lance Hart, and today we've got something really special lined up. As always, my esteemed colleague, John Brueggemann, consulting CISO here at CBTS, and our special guest, Deneen DiFiore, right? Is that correct? Okay,
Yep,
great. Sorry about that. And she's the VP and CISO from United Airlines. Thanks, guys. And John, take it away.
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate it. Deneen, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
What I like to find out when I can is, how did you get started with cybersecurity? And I know you were at GE for a little bit, so do you want to let people know how you got started in the field?
Sure. I got started in technology by accident. I, have a educational background in biology, was in graduate school, and was working on a project for a healthcare system to transfer to electronic medical records. So got into technology that way. Spent, years doing different things around infrastructure, middleware, applications.
So you dropped the biology right away?
Yes, dropped that right away. And then during my career progression at GE, I was the CIO for one of our business units, and we experienced a cybersecurity event. That was back in 2008, 2009. And through that process,
which is before a lot of these tools came out. So that would be an early breach.
It was, yeah. And very interesting to go through an event that time. And I really enjoyed kind of understanding the connection between the risks and the motivations of the threat actors and the impact on business operations. And, kind of never looked back after that. So, the transition from CIO to a CISO was something that happened, and I'm glad it did.
And how long have you been in the CISO position, both because you're at United now?
Yes.
United Airlines, and you were you had the CISO position at GE Aircraft.
Yes, I was. Yeah. So I was at GE Aircraft Aviation at that time for probably 5 or 7 years. I can't remember the details.
So around a decade.
Yeah. And then I've been at United for about 3 years now.
So you've got to see a lot of technology progression, I would argue. There's certainly progression on both sides, kind of a spy versus spy. The hackers get a tool, we get a tool on the blue team, red team sort of a thing. So as you move from 10 years ago, do you see that the technology platform has been a big asset for the defenders, or do you see it as an equal fight, or what's your thoughts on which technologies are winning the war, so to speak?
I think technology advancements have helped us tremendously in cybersecurity, but it's still an asymmetric advantage for the threat actor. Just the volume and the environment that we have to secure as cybersecurity professionals is large, so that attack surface is very large, and it continues to extend outside of, a company's perimeters to third parties or nth parties to trusted partners to, consumers or whatever. Trying to get your arms around that is not an easy thing to do. And a threat actor only has to find,
one crack,
one little loophole in the whole entire ecosystem and they're in. I think technology has given us advantage of, so I'll say, filtering out the noise a lot of times. If you are doing the basics, right? You have your perimeter defenses, you have your endpoint detection and response, you have your network monitoring, you have all your external endpoints behind the WAF, things like that. Your IT teams are patching consistently and you're identifying.
Consistent patching, yes.
You're doing all that stuff, right? I think technology has given us a good advantage to get visibility into what normal should look like.
Right.
And now attackers have to work a little bit harder. But they're getting more creative, and they're taking advantage of things that we wouldn't traditionally think of as cyber attacks. Basic features in systems or
being turned into attacking.
Yes, yeah.
And it's more than just like a denial of service. I mean, you talked a little bit about attack surface management, and that's become a popular buzzword. We'll hold off on a zero trust conversation. So when you think about attack surface management, are there particular tools or particular areas you focus on? I mean, you threw it out fairly quickly and fairly casually that every external asset is behind a WAF, a web application firewall. Yeah. We'll try not to have too many acronyms.
Sure.
If there's an acronym I think people don't understand, I will explain.
Sure, no worries.
But feel free to drop whatever you want.
Yeah, there's a multitude of tools that can help with attack surface management. I think the first principle, though, is to reduce that. So like I said, it continues to grow and extend past normal kind of boundaries. But you have to think about your architecture strategy and really partner with your technology teams. Do environments have to be exposed to the internet? Do lower environments, do they have to be exposed to the internet? Probably not. Do people need access to every single thing or only
from home on their own device?
Right. So that's the first part, is really understanding what your attack surface is and then trying to get a reduction in that to make sure to enable only what you need to do. So that's the first principle that I try to go by and implement that. Now, that's a hard thing to do.
It's a long conversation, and you have to engage those business leaders in those units.
Right.
I'm sure the marketing team wants to have everything out there and just to demonstrate everything. And the operations folks are like, well, now my people are working remotely, so now I have to have visibility into that HVA system as the typical target.
Right.
But how long or how many of those conversations do you have on a regular basis?
Oh, all the time, because there's always a new business case, a new reason why. And, we always want to enable secure outcomes for our airline. Yeah. So it's really understanding kind of what we're trying to achieve and the outcomes that the operations teams or the business teams are looking for. And then we'll try to design a solution to get them what they need to do in a secure fashion.
Yeah, and one of the things on the attack surface management area, it was interesting. Some companies that have grown through mergers and acquisitions, those acquired companies, they may not have a good idea of what the assets are that might be exposed.
Yes.
Even having, and I do security assessments, either based on the NIST cybersecurity framework or on CIS controls, occasionally ISO. Those controls start out with, do you have an inventory of your assets?
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think every organization struggles with that. And I think, you do see a new technology or solution every day popping up around cyber asset management and discovery. And, it's going to solve every single problem. It's a hard thing to do. Definitely understanding what it is you need to know about, but having that outside in view with certain tools, technologies, scans, things like that really helps augment what you know about. So that managed versus unmanaged, and always realizing that there's always going to be unmanaged devices, and you have to kind of come up with some protection strategies around that as well.
So are you a big fan of microsegmentation or breaking out those assets that somebody wants to have exposed, but you're not sure they really should be exposed? Or maybe it's the third party that your HVAC vendor wants to have a tunnel into your network to perform maintenance.
Sure. Yeah, no, I am a fan of microsegmentation. Really big fan of, I'll say, dynamic workload segmentation, where you're really getting down to the services and the communication between those services and only allowing that to happen. That's a hard thing to do too.
What, you mean you had a problem implementing deny by default?
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. It is. You would be surprised. The segmentation strategies over the years are evolving, and I think we probably, as cybersecurity professionals, need to change our thinking about it. We've done a lot of zoning, right? On test versus prod environments or types of data. And that's good. We have to do that, but that's not the end all be all, because data protection is one thing, resiliency is another. And that's depending on your business, right?
As an airline, you're very interested in resilience.
Yeah, exactly. So we can have everything segmented because it's PCI data or, intellectual property or whatever in different zones, but that doesn't do me a lot if there's an event that, can
suddenly breaks it.
Yeah, propagate, and the systems that we need to run the airline from an operations standpoint are impacted. So thinking about microsegmentation in a resiliency lens, right, and looking at it on how the operations use the systems and segmenting that way is something I think, organizations need to think about.
Yeah, and it's true that not every organization would have the same issue with resiliency. A customer I work with is a software vendor, and I had this DR and BCP, so disaster recovery and business continuity planning, and I said, so how long can you be offline? He's like, well, probably 4 weeks. And I was like, how can you be offline for 4 weeks? He goes, well, everybody's developing the software at their house, and we only send invoices out once a month. And I was like, okay, that's a different level of resiliency.
Yeah. Which is it's a
luxury.
Right. That is a luxury, but it's also a point to make sure that you understand, again, what outcomes and how you're trying to achieve as an organization and how your business operates, because data protection could be number one for somebody and resiliency could be number one for somebody else. And those strategies and those tools and the way you approach things really need to be thought of in the context of what you are trying to achieve as a business.
So then in terms of determining which controls have a priority, So we're going to move away from attack surface management. We're going to talk about business priorities and then prioritizing risk.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a risk, a compliance and risk, a GCR, governance, risk and compliance department, but you probably have some feedback into that GRC group to say that risk can be mitigated with this control, or is it done in a different way?
So no, we have a GRC team, and it's under my purview. We
it's under you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The way we think about cyber is it's an intelligence-based approach, right? Because we have to understand what is happening in from a threat actor perspective, who's targeting us, what the techniques are, tools, procedures, all those things. So we really
MITRE attack framework.
Yeah, true. We do use that as well, I think, like a lot of organizations, but really understanding what is happening not only in United, but in the industry and with our partners, because we do not only operate as an airline, but we have financial components, we have retail component as well, too. So looking at all of those things.
I can buy a United Airlines flight attendant outfit?
You can go buy Polaris pajamas if you would like, yes.
Oh, okay.
But, more around with our partners and ecosystems and things like that. Yeah. So we really have to understand what is happening from an intel perspective. And then we look at our technology environment and the changes that are happening in that. There's a lot of cloud transformation and new technologies around, biometrics and things like that are enabling our airline to do things that it couldn't do before, right? So we take a look at
And you're in Chicago, or at least headquartered. Illinois has a very interesting digital privacy.
It does. It's one of the probably most stringent states around privacy and biometrics. So
I've seen a number of cases. So I have a daily newsletter, Law 360, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at the number of privacy lawsuits that hit that on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I think it was McDonald's or somebody who they were having people come to work and pressing their thumb to say, I'm in work.
Yeah.
And I guess they were storing that information, and someone has brought a lawsuit because it was in Illinois.
Right.
I don't know where the status of the case is. So you would have the same thing because people are now able to board planes with their face.
It's a combination of a partnership with DHS, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of still
moving pieces.
Yeah. So we're working through that. There's a lot of proof of concepts, but it's not operationalized across the whole kind of system and network for us as an airline as well as other airlines too.
Yeah, because I think Delta's pushing it out. Here in Cincinnati, there's a big push. I know the last time I flew, they were saying that you won't even have to show your driver's license.
Right.
They'll just walk up and they'll look at your face and they'll go, yes, as a matter of fact, that is John Bruggeman.
Yes, digital ID.
Digital ID. And do you know whether or not that information is stored? And do you have to take into consideration the privacy? I mean, obviously, you have to think, at a minimum, you have to think about the privacy legislation impact.
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's the third leg of what I was talking about. So you have understanding the intel, understanding your environment, and then also the regulatory landscape, which is a huge component of deciding how you're going to approach things, what's controls, and who's going to store data. Do you need consent? All those types of things. What's really important, though, is as you look at either privacy or fraud or whatever it is, those things have a basis in good cybersecurity practices, data protection, and hygiene. So you can layer on the privacy components, but you need that foundation of data protection and things like that.
If you don't know where the data is stored, it's going to be really hard to protect it and really hard to preserve privacy of your customers.
You bet.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was asked to write a blog post on the difference between compliance and security. And I was like, yes, the two are not the same.
No, they aren't. They aren't.
I mean, for some people, I would imagine having to deal with a highly dynamic regulatory environment, a highly dynamic threat environment, and a dynamic and probably growing attack surface. Is that an interesting area for you, or is that, oh my gosh, I'm going to not get sleep tonight?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably both, depending on the day or the time or what's going on. But it is really interesting. And one of the things that we like to do at United, particularly the strategy that I've laid out, is to lead from the front in those areas because the environment is so dynamic and there's a lot of regulatory response to some of those things that are happening, whether it be the geopolitical activities that are happening with the Russian-Ukraine conflict and then that impact to aviation around targeting of airports.
Don't fly over Ukraine.
Yeah, right. The DDoS of airports and different aviation companies, they're doing that a lot, right? So understanding
So the
that,
hacktivists are coming in there.
Yeah. So when things like that happen, there's always a regulatory response around, we need to make sure cybersecurity is really, really strong in aviation. So we like to make sure that we are plugged into the industry groups, the policy making and rulemaking, and providing our comments, and also educating the regulators on what we do and how we run the airline, how we manage technology risk, not only from my team's perspective as a cybersecurity organization, but how that's delegated responsibility and awareness as well into the operation. So as people are doing their jobs, they can identify the information around a threat or around a risk and then raise their hand and say, hey, we need to think about this, or I want you to consider this. It's an interesting journey, but it's something that we have to do to make sure that everybody is aware that cybersecurity is a team sport.
And this is a completely different topic that we hadn't really talked about, but awareness and training. I'm a huge fan of awareness and training, and I feel like I do a lot of awareness in general about cybersecurity. So do you find that as a sizable or a portion of your job is just a general awareness?
Yeah, I have a team that's focused on cybersecurity communications and awareness training. And it's really more of an engagement activity. Yeah, of course, we do the annual cybersecurity compliance training, and we do the
mandatory.
Mandatory stuff. We do the newsletters and the tips and the phishing exercises, right? That's all kind of basic table stakes. But what we also do is look for ways to integrate into the operations how people do work. So, for instance, flight attendants have to train for several months before they actually get to fly.
Right.
So as they're doing their training, learning to use their what we call Link device, their in-flight mobile device, what are the tips that they need to do to make sure that they are handling that device securely, using the application securely? And we do that like in 5-minute blurbs, right? So it's not they're sitting down for cybersecurity training. It's, oh, by the way, you need to use this app to do...
Check who's on the plane.
Right. Or do passenger reconciliation or whatever it is. You need to think about these things from a cyber perspective. Same with the pilots, with their EFBs, their electronic flight bags.
There we go.
Yeah. They use that to check their navigation charts and different notices and
You
things
mean they're
like
not
that.
pulling out a paper
No,
map?
not at all. Not at all. It's all on an iPad these days. So, making sure that they know how to interact with that device securely and look for anomalies and things like that.
So do they get to take that device with them so that you have to worry about their physical security of that device?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So each pilot gets an electronic flight bag.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've got your mobile device management on thousands upon thousands of devices.
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of devices. Yes.
I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
So as you look at that much control that you have to monitor, the controls that you put in place and privacy and the other concerns, have you had difficulty finding enough staff for your positions? Is United hiring?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. United's hiring. We have lots of cybersecurity positions open as well as digital technology positions. So you can go to united.com/careers and check those out. We always look for talent, through the traditional channels from a cyber perspective, but also we hire on potential too. There's a lot of great skill sets within different professions and in industries that translate well to cybersecurity.
You have to give a couple of examples.
Yeah,
you can't tease like that.
Sure. So it's we talked about third-party risk, and if you work in procurement or sourcing or supply chain management, assessing operational risk or financial risk or managing vendors or suppliers.
So the lens of risk.
Yes, you can do that for third-party cyber risk. That's one thing.
That's a good example.
We talked about cybersecurity awareness communications. If you're a great communicator or event coordinator, getting the message to resonate with people in the way that it is meaningful to them, those creative types do that really, really well. And, we'd love to have folks like that join the team and help us on our journey.
So you don't have to be a technologist specifically to be a good cybersecurity professional?
No, not at all. And I think the description of a cybersecurity professional has expanded. People think of, the hacker in the hoodie, right? Or the
not that there's anything wrong with
not
that.
that there's anything wrong with it, or the pen tester or the incident responder, right? That's what they think about cybersecurity.
That is exactly what they think about.
But there's so much more. There's, risk management, there's communication, there's compliance and regulatory advocacy and policy making, training. Yeah, there's just a whole plethora of domains that you could get your foot in the door there.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And then in terms of the things that you enjoy the most about your job, this is why I'd like to come to work. What is that sort of thing?
Well, first of all, it's the mission. I started out my career in aviation at GE Aviation, moved around a little bit, went back to GE Aviation, and then went to United Airlines. So I'm like I'm a hardcore kind of aviation geek, right?
Okay.
So I really love what I do, and I know that what I do makes our operations safer, right? So every time I board a plane, I'm like, I helped do this, right? So that mission and understanding of what we do at United Airlines is not just about people going on vacation. It's about moving.
Although that's not bad.
That's great. But it's not just leisure and business travel. It's transporting cargo, food, medicine. Aviation has changed the world from an economic standpoint. Being part of that bigger mission is really energizing to me. And then specifically with cyber, I mean, every day is a new adventure. I mean, you could have the best laid out strategy and way to go, and you're like, this is what we're doing, and then the world changes, right?
ChatGPT comes around.
Right, exactly. And now you're like, what? And you have to figure it out. And I like that. I like those big, messy, kind of ambiguous problems to solve. So that's what energizes me. And I think, being a cybersecurity professional, you always have to be up for that.
Yes. Rarely will you be bored in cybersecurity.
That's right.
At least at this point in time.
Right.
It's a highly dynamic field. And it was interesting. I remember you said that you like messy things.
Yes.
So do you like to take the mess and organize it?
Yeah, I do. I do. It's more of an art than a science in a lot of cases, because there isn't a blueprint or precedent in a lot of cases. You're kind of making it up as you go along. Mm-hmm. So finding what works for you and your team and your organization is something that is creating and charting a path that people can follow.
It's definitely not routine.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
I mean, we could talk for a few minutes about ChatGPT if you want to.
Sure, we can talk about ChatGPT, generative AI.
Generative AI, yes. And I'm not a huge fan of calling it artificial intelligence because I don't really feel that it's intelligence. It's interesting. I actually started to use the term an expert system.
Yeah.
Because they've taken just a large language model and you can ask it a question and then it will read its index of words that it's put together in their order. So there's some value to it, but where do you see either the threat or where do you see the value add of?
I think it is a game changer for a lot of different use cases. I mean, particularly around, interactions like from a customer service contact center. I mean, there's a lot of efficiency and productivity that an organization can gain, as well as enhancing the customer experience to make it a lot more delightful than, having to wait on a phone for 4 hours when you can get an answer, very quickly based on an approach that an organization wants to take. That's just one use case. There's a list of them that we already have thought about it or thinking about at United. But I think it's really around being responsible. This happened so quickly. Like it was just like an idea. And then 4 weeks later, it's like, okay, people are in production using everything. So I think it's really around responsible AI. It's not only protecting information, but an ethical question. You can do it, but should you do it, right? Privacy, transparency, equity, fairness.
You've just rattled off a laundry list of topics.
Yeah. So it's a lot bigger than people realize, and we have to think about how we want to use this responsibly.
I think that's a good note to end on.
I have a question.
Sure.
Fire away, Lance.
Yeah, a question came in here from the back of my mind, actually. Sorry.
There we go.
I have 2 daughters, right?
Sure.
So one in high school, one in middle school. My question is a little more personal, if you don't mind. And again, I'm interested from a woman's point of view. Obviously the profession in general is pretty gender,
totally.
Right? So I was interested in your challenges, how you got to where you're at today. What that took, what that looks like. If you're willing to share any of that, if not, no big deal. But I think just thinking of my own daughters, and thinking about what they're going to be faced with as they get out there, I feel like you'd be inspirational I mean,
thank
in the role, just hearing you talk and watching you speak here is just, it's really great. And I'd love to know a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah, I think being a woman in cybersecurity does have some challenges. It is a male-dominated field. Even the terminology we use is not very, I'll say, it's biased, right? If you talk cyber warrior, cyber ninja, attack frame, like it's all military-based, which is very, for what it's worth, it
tends to be male-dominated.
Yeah, that's what it is. So I think, as I started my journey, it was challenging those frameworks and calling people out, right? Not everybody thinks about it from a male perspective. I had to kind of raise my hand and say, well, that's not how everybody thinks about it. Some people think about it this way, or I think about it this way. That's not my experience. I had to kind of put myself out there. And it wasn't fun at times, I'm not going to lie. There were days when I'm like, why am I doing this? Exactly. Right. And there still are days where I walk in and I'm the only, woman in the room and, the conversation hushes because they can't, no one feels like they could talk the way they want to talk or whatever. As much progress as we have made around equity and representation, there's still work to do. So, I definitely am a proponent of sponsorship. When I see people, women, underrepresented minorities, I want to pull them up and make sure that their voice is amplified. So I do a lot of work with several organizations around that.
In the cybersecurity field?
In the cybersecurity field,
Okay.
yeah. And I want to make sure that...
Because there's a women in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I do. There's women in cybersecurity, there's women in tech, there's Share the Mic Cyber, there's Black cybersecurity professionals. There's a bunch of organizations that are willing to, provide the resources and framework for folks to have a chance. But you still need people in the CISO level positions or in executive level positions that are sponsoring and kind of putting themselves out there.
And even mentoring.
Yeah, mentoring as well, too. Yeah, but I do a lot of that. So we still have a lot of work to do. It's getting better, but the numbers really haven't changed from...
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, they haven't. I think it's still I think in 2017, it was 11%, 12% were women were represented. Oh, no, CISOs were even less. It's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then 11% of the workforce at that time, and I can't remember what study it was, but now they are saying it's 25, from recent research. In the
workforce.
In the workforce, 25% women. But that's because of one of the things I said. The definition of cybersecurity has expanded to include third-party risk and cybersecurity awareness and communications and, things like that.
But that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's good. I think we need that. I'm happy about that, but I still think we have work to do. The other component where we have work to do is around, I'll say, technical positions.
Absolutely.
So, I don't have a computer engineering degree or or an avionics engineer or anything like that. I learned on my own to do those things. So I can talk the talk and I can...
And you understand it.
Yeah, I understand it. I mean, I'm not rolling up my sleeves anymore and hitting the keyboard, but I know I have to work a little bit harder and be a little bit smarter and come into that room knowing things.
I've heard that a lot from women in the field, is that they feel like, if I'm going to speak, I'm going to be right.
Yeah.
I don't love that. I feel like, because you know how many times I'm wrong, John, you're wrong.
You are never wrong.
I mean, at 5%, you said 5 to 6, as far as CISOs?
Yeah, I think so. I think Fortune 500 companies, I think they did a cybercrime magazine. I think is the reference for that. But yeah, it's.
I mean, so you're just a rare gem. Yeah. I mean, that for sure. I mean, you shouldn't have to be.
I don't know. Tell my husband that.
But I mean, but you shouldn't have to be a rare gem. I mean, you shouldn't be, right? I mean, I'm sure you're very special, right? But I mean, you know what I mean? Opening up the field. And my last question would be, sorry, John, I'm hijacking your show, John. I'm hijacking your show.
The nice thing is,
mine now.
Nice thing is we can edit this however we want. So.
Well, however she would like, right? So, I mean, I'd like to do her justice as well. So if you had a single thing to tell girls like my daughter, and my daughters, and other kids out there that look up, what would be that single thing you would tell girls
if they wanted to get into cybersecurity, or just in general? In
technology, security.
Yeah, technology.
Just in general.
I really think it's...
what worked for you the most?
If you're passionate, you're smart, you will succeed. Don't let anybody tell you you won't. I mean, absolutely not. And you have to have confidence in yourself and know that you will do, you'll get the outcomes you want. And I think that's girls, especially as you get in the middle school, teenage years, it's hard. You struggle with self-confidence because there's so many different external pressures. But to make sure that you have that belief in yourself and really, really stick to your guns. And it's hard to do, but, you have to have somebody who's backing you up. You do. Like if it's your parents or a friend or a sponsor or whatever, but you have to make sure that it comes from in here. Yep. Like that's the biggest thing. Like nobody else is going to do it for you except for you. I think a lot of girls think, well, if I work hard, if I get good grades, I'm the top of my class, it will just happen for me. It won't. Like you have to, it has to come inside and from here, and you have to make it happen for you. And you have to put yourself out there. Yeah, you do. And sometimes you'll get hurt, and sometimes you'll cry, because I did a lot. Oh, I do too. I do, and I still do. Yeah, but it's okay, because in the end, you have to feel like you have to look in the mirror and feel good about what you're doing. And I know a lot of I do. I know I'm doing the right thing. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Very good. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great time. As always. Thanks for joining CBTS Tech Talk inside the CISO's office. We'll see you next time. Take care.